Welcome back to the second segment of the Hujjaj.co podcast, streaming on Unity FM 93.5 FM. I'm joined here today by a very special guest, as I mentioned before as well, Shaikh Zulfiker Ibrahim Memon, who, apart from being a scholar of Islam, he lives in Medina, and there he works as he's in charge of the English section of the Council of Forbidding the Evil and Encouraging the Good. This takes him on to what we were speaking about just now, the role where he stands in front of the Prophet ﷺ's grave and guards it, and that's what we've just been speaking about. Sheikh, that takes us on to Medina itself. You live in Medina. Could you, for somebody, all the listeners who are listening, could you just tell us about the virtues of Medina?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. With regards to the fadail of Medina, then Medina has many, many virtues. It would be literally impossible just to mention them all in such a short period of time. But I'll mention a few. As we all know that Al-Madinatu Nabawi alayhi salatu wassalam is the place which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to migrate to.
Yeah.
As we all know that the Jews in the scriptures knew about the emergence of the last prophet and the messenger that would appear, and they knew in the land in which he would appear.
Yeah.
That's why we find that the Jews, many of them are residing in Yemen, because as we know that the palm trees and that the cultivation and the greenery that can be found can either be found in Yemen, or it can be either found in Medina, which was known as Yathrib. So the Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave al-Qura, which is the head of all the villages at that time, Makkah, which is Makkah. Another name for Makkah is al-Qura. And the Prophet ﷺ was chosen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose that the Prophet ﷺ migrate to Medina, Yathrib. So you can imagine the virtue of such a place that Medina is being replaced by Makkah.
Wow.
And when the Prophet ﷺ was leaving Makkah,
Makkah's been replaced by Medina.
Makkah has been replaced by Medina. When the Prophet ﷺ was leaving Makkah, he was, that was his homeland. Anybody that's his homeland will always have an attachment to it, a love for it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he addressed Makkah by saying that, had I not been taken out from this land, had I been not taken out from Makkah, I would have never left Makkah. But I have to leave because of the attempt that the kuffar were doing of trying to assassinate him, and Allah had planned that Islam was going to spread not from Makkah, but it was going to be spreading from Medina. So Medina, from the start, its virtues that it became the central point and the focal point of Islam, especially ilm. That the first madrasa that we find is the Masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Prophet's Masjid, where the Prophet would sit down and educate and cultivate and make tarbiyah of the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. So this is one of the virtues of Medina. The other virtues of Medina is that Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua for Makkah. The Prophet ﷺ made dua for Medina.
Subhanallah.
Whatever dua the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam made for Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ made dua for that in double.
For Medina.
So we can see the virtues of Medina, how much the Prophet ﷺ loved Medina, that Makkah was blessed. The Prophet ﷺ asked Allah to bless Medina as well. And as we know that Medina, like for example, some of the virtues that Medina has is that Medina has a garden of paradise, where the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, where he said that Ma bayna bayti wa minbari rawdatu min riyadil jannah, that between my house and my pulpit there lies one garden of paradise, rawdatu min riyadil jannah. That's where you see a lot of the people that they call it the green carpet or the white carpet during the month, that everybody's fighting on trying to get a space inside there so that they can pray some form of salah if it's easy for them. So this is, as you know, that Medina has a garden of paradise. You understand? What it means by the garden of paradise is that before the day of judgment, that land or buqa, like they say, will ascend and become part of Jannah. It's not that it's part of Jannah today.
So it's not like it's descended from Jannah.
No,
it's actually going to
ascend to Jannah.
Ascend to
Jannah.
Subhanallah.
And the other thing which they say is that any action that is done there will take you straight to Jannah. Any good deed that may be done there will be a means for you to enter into Jannah. These are the two main explanations that have been given by the scholars and the commentators of Hadith. So it has a garden of paradise. At the same time, we also know that there is a masjid by the name of Masjid Quba. That when the Prophet ﷺ first came to Medina, he stopped at Quba, which was a village outside Medina.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and the Prophet ﷺ stayed there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ, the first masjid that was built, the masjid on Ussisa ala taqwa min awwal yawmin ahaqqu an taquma fih, was Masjid in Quba. Before the Prophet ﷺ built and bought the land for Masjid in Nabawi.
Yeah.
So the Prophet ﷺ, the people of Quba became very attached to the Prophet ﷺ because they were his hosts for 2 weeks, and then he left them, which was very sad for them.
Yeah.
So the Prophet ﷺ would visit the people of Quba every Saturdays. Even if he didn't have a ride, he would walk there, and every Saturdays he would visit the people of Quba to ask about their whereabouts.
Yeah.
So it's a sunnah, they say, that if you're in Medina, to visit Masjid Quba on a Saturday. And then the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith that if anybody was to make wudu from his house and come to Masjid Quba and pray a salah in there, he will get the reward of one single Umrah. So that's another virtue we have. We have the virtue of the Masjid Quba. We have the Garden of Paradise. We have Quba. And like I said, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the Haram is between Ayn and Thawr, 2 mountains, where the Prophet ﷺ said that this is the boundaries of the sanctuary of Medina. Medina, between Ayn and Thawr, two mountains, which the Prophet ﷺ said. So in generally we find that this is some of the virtues that Medina have. Another virtue which Medina has is that a single prayer prayed inside the Prophet ﷺ's masjid is equal to 1,000. The Prophet ﷺ said, Salatun fi masjidi hadha khayru min alfi salatin illa al-masjid al-haram. That the reward of a single prayer in my masjid is equivalent to 1,000 fold except for Masjid al-Haram, because Masjid al-Haram is 100,000. So anybody prays salah inside the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, then the Prophet, he would get the reward of 1,000 rewards extra than he would be praying anywhere else, anywhere in the world. So this is with regards to the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. We also find that the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, as we know, went through a lot of extensions. There was an extension during the time of the Prophet ﷺ's life. Then there was the next extension during the time of Umar ibn Khattab. Then there was the next extension during the time of Uthman ibn Affan. So the Prophet ﷺ's masjid went through a lot of renovations, through a lot of extensions. And we find that the Prophet ﷺ's grave, which is now today part of his masjid, was in fact separated from his masjid.
So it wasn't actually the way it is now, where you have the back part.
The eastern side. They call it the Sharqi, which is the eastern side of the masjid. That was separate from the masjid, because that was the chamber of Aisha radiallahu anha, which is known as the Hujra of Aisha radiallahu anha, and that's where the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And as we know that the Prophets and the Messengers are buried where they pass away. That was separate from the masjid. Almost until 100 years, when the Muslim Khalifa or Caliph by the name of Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, what would happen is that on Fridays, when the masjid would get full, the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, people would go inside and pray salah inside them.
They would pray salah inside the houses.
Except for the house of Aisha, because the Prophet ﷺ was buried in there. So when Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan found out, he wrote a letter to the governor of Medina at that time, who was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And he said to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz that, why don't you demolish the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, give the money to their families, and extend the masjid from the eastern side. And that's what Umar ibn Abdul Aziz did. But when he did do this, the grave of the Prophet ﷺ would have to become part of the masjid. So what Umar ibn Abdul Aziz did, who was very intelligent, he built a pentagon around the Prophet ﷺ's masjid.
Which is why
around his grave, so that nobody could face towards his grave.
With the back being the little pointed.
The rear side being having a point, which is a pentagon, which is has 5 corners to it, that nobody could face towards the Prophet ﷺ's grave and pray towards it.
And to make it look different to the Kaaba as well.
Well, that's what they say. So initially, after 100 years, the Prophet ﷺ's grave, although it became part of the masjid, but it's still detached from the masjid. It's separate from the masjid, because nobody can pray in that area.
So you touched on a bit of history there, Sheikh, of Medina. Going into the history of Medina then, so the masjid which we see today, obviously the outer parts of the masjid are really obvious because they look quite modern, but the minute you get to the old part, I mean, you're saying there was a lot of extension in the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala and Uthman radiallahu ta'ala.
No, and the Prophet ﷺ. There was an extension
in the time of the Prophet ﷺ.
When the Prophet ﷺ extended the masjid, it was 50 meters by 50 meters. So when you enter from Babu Salam, a lot of people don't know this. When you enter from Babu Salam to give salam to the Prophet ﷺ, when you keep walking straight, after you pass the Khawqa of Abu Bakr. The khawka of Abu Bakr was like a small house. The Prophet ﷺ ordered all the other khawkas to be destroyed except for the khawka of Abu Bakr, because of the status that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had. That is where Bab Abu Bakr Siddiq is. Bab Abu Bakr Siddiq is next to Bab Salam, the next door, and you can see that it's written that that's where the khawka of Abu Bakr is. And at the same time, in Bab Abu Bakr Siddiq, we have a small cell with the police. They have, so if anybody does get arrested, that's where we lock them up. They go into Bab Abu Bakr Siddiq, there's a small cell, and that's where the interrogation and the investigation takes place. Anything that happens within the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. So Bab Abu Bakr Siddiq is known, and that's where it is. So the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, when the Prophet ﷺ died, after the extension was 50 meters by 50 meters, square meters. So yes, so the way that you can see the old masjid being distinctive from the newer masjid, or the extension, or the new extension, is that you will see that a lot of the old masjid is in pink. The color is pink, which was first sort of like burgundy type of a color during the times of the Turk, but then the Saudis have painted it more towards it being pink. And that part of the masjid is open 24 hours a day.
I see.
So a lot of the people know that the masjid officially closes at 11 o'clock. But the old part of the masjid from Babu Salam and Babu Bakr Siddiq, and the old part of the masjid to give salams and to pray in the Riyadh al-Jannah, that remains open 24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
So all the decoration that we see and all the domes and that we see that are being built, they were all built during the time of the Turks.
Oh, okay, so it's interesting, because I always wondered the pink. I wondered how old. I did actually think that, because pink's such a distinctive color, and I wondered who decided this. And you can see the old burners now as well, which would have contained the lamps. From
they've left a lot of the one thing a lot of people don't understand about the Saudi government. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them with the good that they do, is that if they remove something or they replace something, they would always leave a landmark to show that this something was here.
That there was something. There.
They never ever. Unfortunately, the propaganda that is done about them, that they just destroy things like that, that's not true. Because going back to the incident, if making extensions or something like this was not feasible, then Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan should be the first person that should be accused of destroying Islamic heritage. And Omar ibn Abdul Aziz, who everybody loves, is the one that ordered it. And so all the houses of the Prophet ﷺ, except for the house of Aisha.
Subhanallah. And in Riyadh al-Jannah, so in Riyadh al-Jannah, we're looking at the area where the Prophet ﷺ would have prayed, would have stayed, would have walked, and so much. From that area, obviously, whenever I go and when I saw you there, Sheikh, as well, you wonder where the Prophet walked, where he stood, could you give us some indication?
There's a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari that there used to be a specific spot where the Prophet ﷺ used to always pray, and that's behind one of the pillars, and that's known as Ustawanatul Mushaf. Do you understand? The pillar of the Mus'haf. They call it the pillar of the Mus'haf because the scrolls of the Quran that were written were put in a box and placed there. So we know that Abi Salama radiallahu, one of the companions, Salama ibn al-Aqwa. Salama ibn al-Aqwa would go inside the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his slave would go with him, accompany him. And whenever they would go inside the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, he would always pray on a particular spot.
Right.
So his slave, who was a student as well, Yazid ibn Abi Ubaid, he asked him, he said, that why do I always see you pick this particular spot, always wanting to pray here? He said, so Salama ibn al-Aqwa said to his student that when I used to accompany the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ used to always pray here.
Wow.
So when I come to pray here now, I also pray here. So this is the place which is known as Ustawanatul Masjid. So there's no harm for a Muslim to do exactly what Salama ibn al-Aqwa or Yazid ibn Abi Ubaid did, which was to pray in that particular spot. That which is, you can say, not feasible or not appropriate to do is to seek blessings from that place, because the whole of Riyadh al-Jannah is a place which is blessed. There's no particular place that has preference over it.
And the way to do that is to pray there.
Yes, to pray there. And the Prophet ﷺ, he himself used to pray there. So if somebody was to follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, and he prayed there. So when my son came, when I told him, and when he was visiting Medina in his holidays, he told me, I want to pray exactly where the Prophet ﷺ prayed. So we took him there, and there was two policemen who stood there, and they allowed him, to pray there.
What's distinctive about it? If I was to visit Medina,
no, there's nothing distinctive about it. You would have to know.
You'd have to know.
It's exactly the same.
Hopefully
because
next time.
The reason know why it's not distinctive. Is because it doesn't have a distinctive virtue.
Yes.
But it has a historical
aspect
of it.
Yeah. No, that's totally understandable. That's amazing. I'm going to have to look out for that. And hopefully you're in Medina next time when I go, and maybe you can show me where that is. Absolutely. So, in the Prophet ﷺ's houses and the way in which the Prophet ﷺ's houses were, the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, how far were they from the masjid? Were they joined to the masjid?
They were all close to the masjid, but they were all in different places. So they were all around the masjid. They were not far, but they were in different places. They
weren't all on that side where the grave is?
No, they were all in different places.
Okay,
like they said, the house of Hafsa is in front, where they say that you go to give salams towards that side.
Oh, really?
Do you understand? So they were all in different places, because you have to understand that the houses were not part of the masjid.
Yes, of
and
course.
then the houses became part of the masjid.
Yeah.
So now all the houses of the Prophet ﷺ, the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, radiyallahu anhunna, they're all part of the masjid.
Subhanallah.
So Aisha radiyallahu anha's house is towards the eastern side, where we see right near the masjid. That was one of the closest houses towards the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Jazakallahu khairan, Sheikh. So the thing I wanted to ask about was, you've spoken about the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. The mihrab and the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ.
No.
Is there any specific or special?
With regards to the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ, we know that the Prophet ﷺ first, before he got on a pulpit, the mimbar is known as the pulpit.
Yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ would lean on a tree and would give his sermons, because when you are giving sermons, to stand in one position and standing up position, that posture is very difficult.
Yes.
So Prophet ﷺ used to recline on something, and he would recline on the tree.
Yeah.
When one of the companions saw that the Prophet ﷺ every week, was going through this hardship of always reclining and leaning onto a, you can say, a tree.
Yeah.
The companion came and said, and he was a carpenter, and he said, I'm going to make a pulpit for the Prophet ﷺ. And he made a pulpit for the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he stood on the pulpit when it was made and started giving khutbah.
Yeah.
When he started to give the khutbah, in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, there was noises of somebody crying like a baby. And all the Sahabas were looking at one another, that who was crying, and they could not find anybody crying until they saw that the tree was crying. So the Prophet ﷺ got up from his mimbar, and just like a father embraces a child, when it's crying, the Prophet ﷺ put his hand around and started comforting the tree
and calming
it down because the tree was upset. And now the Prophet ﷺ had stood on the mimbar.
Yeah.
So this shows that the Prophet ﷺ was a rahmatul lil alameen. He was a mercy for the entire universe, and miracles prove the fact that the tree was so attached to the Prophet ﷺ that when the Prophet ﷺ, that day when he decided to give his sermon, his khutbah, and he did not stand, the tree could feel that the Prophet ﷺ was giving a khutbah. Because it has a life, but the Prophet ﷺ wasn't leaning on it. The Prophet, the tree started to cry like a baby.
Subhanallah.
Prophet comfort. So that's with regards to the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ. Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to stand there many times, to sit there many times. I've had the chance to clean it quite a few times as well, alhamdulillah. Although the place is exactly the same, the actual size of the mimbar today is not the mimbar, because the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ only had 3 steps. So the mimbar that's been built, I think it's been built by most probably by the Turks, which has a lot of steps. Because the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ, the pulpit, only has 3 steps. And then we've got the mihrab. The mihrab of the Prophet ﷺ, what we see, which has this type of mukawwas type of a thing, what do you call it? When you go inside, it's the curved thing. Then this wasn't during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This has been built afterwards. Mihrab in the Arabic language means the most front place to pray somewhere.
I see.
So every single prayer where you pray at the front is known as a mihrab. But the perception of the people is that they call a mihrab, which has that curved thing, which you pray. So this really does not have no real significance. But the Prophet ﷺ used to pray where I told you to pray, where he used to lead the companions ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in first, when he came to Medina, in the opposite direction, which was the direction towards Al-Quds. And then when the Masjid Aqsa, then when the Qibla was changed, then the Prophet ﷺ moved on the opposite direction, which is now towards the Makkah, which is the Qibla.
I see. So when we are there, These things we see as well. One of the things we also do is give salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's many types of salam you can read, and I've seen many types of salam that you can say. What's the best way to say salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Everybody knows about Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. That Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, he had a specific quality that that was different, you could say, from the other companions ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. His love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was what we would say on a next level. He did a lot of things which he didn't have to do, but he did them out of love. So nobody can argue and nobody can say that the love of Abdullah ibn Umar can be matched by any one of us today. So his way of giving salams, it would be the best way of giving salams.
Absolutely.
And Abdullah ibn Umar had a habit that when he would travel out of Medina, he would come to the Prophet's grave and give salam. And when he would come back from his travels and he had a chance, he would come and give salams to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to remember in mind that that time the Prophet's grave was not part of the Masjid.
Oh, of course.
It was separate from the Masjid.
Yes.
Bear that in mind. So we know that Abdullah ibn Umar, which has been narrated about him, is that even when the Prophet ﷺ stopped to relieve himself when he would travel with his students, he would say, wait, we can't pass, we have to camp out here. They would say, why? But there's no need for us to camp out, we're not tired. He goes, no, when I traveled with the Prophet ﷺ, he relieved himself here, so I'm not going to pass until I relieve myself here.
Wow.
And the Prophet ﷺ went up a particular type of hill in Makkah. When he reached Makkah, he said, we have to go up, we have to go up this hill. They said, why? Because he said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ go up this hill. And when I came with him, so I have to go up. So this is the love of Abdullah ibn Umar, radiyallahu anhuma. But we saw that this love that he did was not to seek any blessings or anything. It was just to follow the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tahari, like they say, or tatabbu, like they say in the Arabic language. So when he would come to the Prophet's grave, his salam was such a beautiful salam. If all the Muslims were to implement the way he gave salam, then everybody would be given a chance to visit the Prophet's grave in a very nice manner without being pushed or shoved or troubled.
Yes.
And he would come to the Prophet's grave and he would say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, without raising his hands, without making dua or anything, in a very, you can say, having great manners, in a manner which was befitting for a person to stand in front of the Prophet ﷺ without raising his voice. And he would say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, and then he would say, Assalamu alayka ya Khalifata Rasulillah Abu Bakr Siddiq, and then he would say, Assalamu alayka ya Abati, and then he would walk. And this has been reported by Abu Dawud in his Sunan. So this is the best way of giving salams to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, and I guess the other question I've got is, what are the etiquettes of visiting Medina? Generally speaking, what things should we watch out for? What should we do when we're there? A
person, when he visits the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam city, first of all should know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam city, which is known as Madinah University alayhi salatu wasalam, has been blessed and has a virtue over other cities. And this is the same city where the Prophet ﷺ walked, where the Prophet ﷺ lived. So when a person is actually coming to the Prophet ﷺ city, one thing he should make an effort is to learn about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, read about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, try to find out where certain events happen, so that the person can really feel that he is in the city of the Prophet ﷺ, and then after experiencing this, enhancing one's knowledge, to implement that in his daily life when he goes back home to his home country.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'd say is, when we do ziyarah, we oftentimes, obviously we go to Masjid Quba, like you mentioned, and the reward of getting the reward of an Umrah, right? What other places should we visit when we go? The
places which are mustahab or sunnah to visit in the Prophet ﷺ city are basically four. The Prophet ﷺ's Masjid. And when you after you visited the Prophet ﷺ's Masjid, it's mustahab for you then to visit the Prophet ﷺ's grave. But the intention should be of visiting the Masjid, then you should visit the Prophet ﷺ's grave. Visiting Baqi, Al-Baqi al-Gharqad, which is the graveyard of Medina, where thousands of companions are buried. The third is to visit Shuhada Uhud, where the companions have been buried. The Prophet ﷺ would visit every Thursdays. And the fourth place to visit is Masjid al-Quba, which the Prophet ﷺ would visit every Saturday. These are the only places that we find in the books of Sunnah that are mustahab for the people to visit. Everything else additional than that could be on the basis of educational purpose or self-interest.
Absolutely. No, Jazakallahu khairan, Sheikh. We've got 1 minute left. Any leaving advice for people who will be going on Hajj this year and in the following years? Obviously, this is going to go online. What would you be your advice?
My advice to the Muslims is that when they come to the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, let them adhere to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they should abstain from doing such actions which are contrary to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Aisha radiyallahu anha, she said that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Whoever does an action which is not in accordance to our affair or our command, the Prophet ﷺ said, that will be rejected. So if you're going there to the Prophet ﷺ city, don't try to be smart and try to use your own analogy or speculate or try to do actions. Ask the people of knowledge meaning those who have knowledge of the sunnah, that what you should be doing in Medina and what you should not be doing in Medina. Because if you want to visit Medina, then you want to follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ in every step you take.
Absolutely. Jazakallahu khairan. And that has been one of the most interesting podcasts that we've recorded so far. And Jazakallahu khairan, Sheikh, for your time. And Jazakallahu khairan for the listeners, and may Allah reward the listeners for listening and accept when they do go on Hajj and Umrah, accept the ibadah as well. That's been the podcast of Hujjaj.co on Unity FM. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.